All right, so we left off in the last video talking about domain names and where to purchase them from. Go ahead and just purchase, whatever you're looking for. Remember, you can always change it around later. You can always have a different domain name point back to the same hosting. We'll kind of get into some of that stuff later on, but purchase your domain name. Now, depending on who you purchase that through, there may be some things that they offer as an add-on, like maybe emails or again, it's kind of securing your information so it's not available to the public as far as who registered for that domain name. They may show your information of like your name, your address, maybe your phone number. I don't remember. There is some different information. You may want to lock that down. I think that's like another 10, 15 bucks a month or a year, excuse me. Just depends on who you're going with, but something you may want to look at. But really, for the most part, I don't worry about the upsells. I just go right to the domain name and just purchase that, and I'm all set. Now, when it comes to hosting, that's a little bit different of a ballgame. Now, that may run a different price depending on who you go to. There are a lot of great hosts. I'm going to show you a couple, and I'm going to show you what to watch out for. So this is where things kind of start to get a little bit, where you want to really pay attention to and put a little bit of thought into. Maybe not go for the cheapest one, because the cheaper, sometimes the more kind of issues you're going to have. So for the most part, there are two different types of hosting. There's shared hosting, which is where you are on a server with possibly hundreds of other websites. You are sharing that server with them. That means that if one of the websites gets hacked, there is a slim chance that your website could get hacked as well, even though they're not on the same domain name. They are on the same server, so there is potential. More of a concern, personally, is the speed of the server. Remember, a server is just a computer, any kind of computer where it has a processor, it has RAM, and it has hard drive space. So they're going to fill up that hard drive, and all those websites are still just like a program on your desktop. They are competing for the RAM and the processor speed on your website, on your computer. So your website may slow down if another website on that server is using a lot of RAM or a lot of processor speed. Just depends what's going on. So maybe there's a ton of videos that another website uploaded on the server, and a ton of people are all of a sudden watching those videos on that other website. Again, even though it has nothing to do with your website, yours may slow down a little bit because all those videos are taking up the RAM and the processor speed of the server. So kind of think about that. I'm going to show you what those are here in a second. One other thing that there are a couple options for is the type of server that you're going on. Now, there are typically, for the most part, two options: Windows servers and Linux servers. Personally, 99 times out of 100, I use a Linux server. WordPress runs just fine on a Windows server as well, but I just find the software that runs on a Linux server is a little bit more robust. I like it a little bit better. You may get different opinions from different people who are more into Windows servers. I think they may be a little bit more secure. Some other options there, just maybe look into it, but for the most part, I stick with a Linux server, and I'm going to show you that as we get into this. Now, a lot of hosts, they offer different types of hosting. So you're going to see that there is hosting up here, which we can take a look at. And you can see they offer web shared hosting, then virtual private server. So this is where you get a portion of a server, and you get that certain amount of RAM and processor speed allocated to any website that you put on that server. And then there's a dedicated server where you get the entire server to yourself, all the RAM, all the processor speed. You get a ton of room, and your site is going to be lightning fast for the most part, but you're definitely going to pay the price for that. So you've got web hosting, and this is all of your basic shared hosting accounts. So $249 a month, all the way up to $20 a month. These are for all the different, just the amount of space is basically the difference that you're getting, the amount of space on that server that you're getting. A managed WordPress site. So this is a little bit different. A lot of hosts are starting to come out with a server specifically for WordPress. They will offer some kind of a nice things. So for the most part, I have been going more with these managed WordPress websites. You can see they're just a little bit more per month, but definitely worth it because usually they run a little bit faster. And then the other two options we looked at up there were the VPS, the virtual private server. You're getting that portion of a server all dedicated to you, and you can run a bunch of websites on here. So for about 18 bucks a month compared to 4 bucks a month, if you're ever going to host 4, 5, 6 websites, yeah, I would definitely get the VPS. It's such a great option. I have actually, I think, 3 VPS accounts. Definitely a great way to run a website. And if you really know what you're doing and you really need a ton of speed and a ton of room on a server, $70 a month, you can get a fully dedicated server. Great options there. GoDaddy, again, if you're going to go up to the VPS or maybe the WordPress, I would say you're probably fine sticking with them. I'm not a huge fan of them as a host. I do like their domain names. We did see that Namecheap is offering hosting. You can see they have the same kind of thing where they've got shared hosting plans, very similar in price here. WordPress hosting, $1 a month. Wow, what a great deal. See, a lot of these you got to watch out for because then they renew after a year for a little bit higher per month, but you can see that that was still the same price that GoDaddy was offering. I think theirs were $3.99 as opposed to $3.88. Ooh, 11 cents. I can save. Another host I really like is InMotion. Again, same kind of options. They get the VPS, the dedicated, different types of business hosting, shared hosting, kind of the same thing right there. A little bit more per month, but they're also a very good company, really good tech support. I really like them. I have a VPS with them. They do have WordPress hosting. I have that with them as well. They have a couple different packages here. And again, you can see they're a little bit more expensive, but you're actually getting a lot more with it. This one comes with a free domain name. So maybe that's something you want to look at. You can get a free, kind of roll it all into there. You can get a ton of SSD storage. That's great. That stands for solid state drive, which is a very fast hard drive. It's more like RAM. It's definitely something you want to look for when you get into WordPress websites. Another site that I really like, and I forgot to pull it up here, is siteground.com. Again, a little bit more expensive, but they are a great hosting company. You can see that these start at $3.95 a month, but they kind of renew at $11.95 a month. They have a lot of great options in there. They have things that'll speed up your website. They have things that'll look for malware and viruses on a regular basis. So this is something to maybe consider. I do host with them as well. I really like SiteGround a lot. So really any of those options I would stick with. You start to get into some other random websites that offer free hosting or $1 a month hosting, you're going to get what you pay for. So just be careful. If you don't want to spend a lot, maybe stick with GoDaddy in the beginning. You can always move stuff around later on. But personally, I would say either SiteGround or InMotion would be where I would start. So in the next video, we're going to talk about actually, after you've purchased all this stuff, what to do next. All right, so in the last couple of videos, we have looked at where to get a domain name from, where to get hosting from, and the different options that you have for it. That is going to be the first thing that you want to do to really decide on where your blog is going to be taken to. I say that because, again, we talked about the shared hosting being a little bit slower, the WordPress hosting being a little bit faster, and the different options that come with each. Personally, you want to keep it simple. Maybe just buy both through GoDaddy, keep it really simple, or buy both through InMotion, really simple. I think even SiteGround, do they have domain names? I'm pretty sure you can purchase a domain name through them as well, even though they're not specifically saying it right up here. But go ahead and get one of those. What that'll do is get the domain name and the hosting connected together. If you buy them separately, I'm going to show you how to do that, is connect them as well. Not a big deal to do, but let's take a look. So you've purchased one of these. They're going to send you information on how to get into something called a cPanel or a control panel. This is going to be where you're going to go to set up your WordPress website. So I have one already pulled up here. And this is typically what a cPanel looks like. Now, they may have a couple different, there are different skins for this, so it may look a little bit differently, but all this information is, for the most part, pretty much the same. Now, this is a test domain name that I set up with hosting on one of my VPSs. And so I'm just going to use this for demonstration purposes here. So what this is in Control Panel is this gives you kind of back-end access to everything about the server that you're on. Now, not your website necessarily, but the server that you're on. So maybe I want to upload a file to my website. When you first log in, you're going to see maybe a bunch of things like this. Maybe you won't see all these files with a dot in front of them. Every host will be a little bit different, but for the most part, you're going to want to just look at the public HTML file. And you can see that's completely empty right now. The CGI bin, that's all part of the hosting, so that's really nothing you need to worry about. It's nothing that shows up. But here I could start to upload files to my website. Maybe I just wanted to have a place where people could download PDFs for a little while, or graphics, things like that. This is just kind of the starting point if you ever needed to. These are the kinds of things that Control Panel gives you access to. Some of the other things it gives access to is a database. Now, not to scare you off, but you will be installing a database. It's very, very simple to do. I'll show you one where you can kind of avoid that when installing WordPress, but WordPress works off of a database. So if you ever needed to go in and edit the database, that is here. With some hosting accounts, you can actually add on other domain names to your hosting. So you could host multiple sites on one hosting account here. You could also add a subdomain. So maybe you wanted to do a different language of your blog. So you can maybe just have your main blog, again, Keith.com as an English speaking blog, but maybe you wanted to translate it to Portuguese and German or whatever else you wanted to do, Spanish. You could create a subdomain that could be like espanol.keith.com, something like that. So you can set up those subdomain names here. It's also a place where you can go and set up emails for your account. You can see your stats of the website, like how many people are visiting your website. These are usually very detailed lists. Errors, maybe someone is hitting an error page on your website and you're going to take a look at that, maybe get that fixed. Different things like that. Security, you may want to set up some kind of security. Again, for the most part, I wouldn't worry too much about that kind of stuff. The host handled a lot of that. I'm going to show you some other ways to actually secure your website later on. Most of this stuff is stuff you'll never ever worry about, but what you're looking for is a very quick and easy way to install your WordPress website, and I'm going to show you that in the next video. Alright, so we're back. We're going to install WordPress onto our hosting account here. Now, every host is going to be a little bit different here. Again, I said most of them are going to give you a control panel that's going to look something like this. Again, maybe the icons may look a little bit different. It'll just depend on the skin that is on their control panel. But for the most part, it should be kind of the same. So just look for the names. There's probably going to be an area for applications. Now, this is going to be where the host has kind of pre-installed versions of software that it will then install onto your hosting account for you. Some offer a lot of options. Some will just offer one, like this one is just offering a WordPress website. Some will offer tons of different CMSs and accounting platforms and CRMs and things like that. They may be hidden under something called Softalicious. Just maybe look for that account, but you'll probably see something given the title like applications or installations or something like that. It'll look just like that. But for this case, this is perfect because we want to install a WordPress website, and we're going to do it the very easy way first. And the next video, I'll show you how to do it manually in case your host does not provide something like this. So I'm going to go ahead and click on WordPress Manager. And you can say, you can see that it says installation, no compatible installation is on this account. So I'm going to go ahead and create one. And first, it's going to walk me right through. It's going to show me, what version of WordPress it will install at the time of this video. This is the most current version. It really doesn't matter for the rest of what we're going to be doing here, what version you see, because it may just look a little bit different. But for the most part, everything is going to be the same. Not a lot changes from version to version of WordPress. They do make improvements, but again, nothing you're going to need to really worry about or find this video to be outdated on. So it's going to ask you, where do you want to install it? So maybe I wanted to install this in one of those subdomains that I talked about, or maybe I want to just put this into a folder. So maybe I want to create a whole separate blogging area on my website. For the most part, you're probably not going to want to do that. You're probably just going to install this as being the main part of the website. So we'll just keep the regular domain name as it is. And I'll just click install. And we're going to watch this go through, and this is probably going to ask me a couple questions. When it does, we're going to want to write this information down. With some of the installs, it's going to do the work for me and give me a username and password, and maybe even the database information that I'm going to want to write down. All right, so you can see right there, it finished it up. I can access the website. It's already installed for me. It went from nothing. We saw that file. We opened up the folder, and we saw there was nothing on my host. We'll take a look at what it did here in a second. But it did give me a username and password, so I'm going to go ahead and copy that. I'm on a Mac, so what I like to do is open up just like text edit, and for right now, I'm just going to paste that information in there so I have it. Personally, I also use Evernote. I love to host all my passwords and things in there. But for right now, I'm just going to use this little text program. All right, so let's go ahead and go back. So we know that's installed. Come back home. So let's go back into the file manager here, and we can take a look. Remember, we went into the public HTML file, And I can see there's a whole bunch of files in there now, not just the CGI bin. This is everything that WordPress uses to basically work. Again, none of this stuff is something you'll probably ever have to worry about, but just know that it's there and you can see that it did all the work for me. Now in the next video, I'm going to go ahead and install this manually. So if you do not want to watch that, feel free to skip over to the next video. If you do want to see how it's done manually, it's great to learn how to do. It's not very complicated, very kind of simple to do for the most part, just a couple extra steps. Alright, so in this video I'm going to install WordPress manually. Maybe my control panel did not have an option to install any kind of WordPress, or maybe I did some, I don't know. There's a lot of different reasons you may want to do this manually. I typically do it manually just because I like to do it for whatever sick, twisted reason. So to do that, it's very simple to do. Just you can do this on any hosting environment. We're going to go to wordpress.org. Now remember, it's not .com, it's .org. There's a little difference there. The .com is the blogging platform. The .org is the kind of the resource center if you want to learn more about WordPress. They have a lot of good information here. All you have to do is go. It's always in the same spot. Up here it says Get WordPress. So we'll go ahead and click on that. And we'll download the most current version right here. So I'll say download, and I'll save it to my desktop. And again, depending on when you install this, you will probably see version 5.0 or 5 point something. Obviously, I know they are getting ready to come out with that here pretty soon. I think they're already testing it out for the most part, but you're probably not going to notice much of a difference. There will be some differences, but nothing that's really going to affect what you do. All right, so within a couple seconds there, you can see that this has downloaded to my desktop. And I'm going to come back to my control panel up here. So there's going to be two things that we want to do. For one, we need to upload these files, and we need to decompress them. The other thing is we need to create a database. Ooh, big scary database. Don't worry about it. I'm going to walk you through that. It's very, very simple to do. All we need to do is create an empty one, and there is a wizard that will help us kind of walk us through the steps of what we need to do. And we'll get that all set up and running. Then we'll connect the two, and we'll have an up and running website here in less than 5 minutes. All right. So we're going to go to File Manager here at the top. And again, we want to make sure that we are in the root directory of the kind of the hosting account of where your domain name is pointing to. This is kind of outside of the root. All this stuff right here, this makes up things that do different things for your website. Does different checks, emails, things like that. Just tracks login information. We want to make sure that we're in this public public HTML. Sometimes you'll see a folder that just says www. They really basically take you to the same spot. You can see actually there's one right here, but there's a little link right there, meaning that it's an alias where it just takes you into here. Public FTP, that's where people could upload files to if they were, maybe like a print shop or something where they were transferring files. Good place, just kind of keeps it separate from your hosting, but we don't really worry about that. We're only worried about this public HTML. I'll double click that. You can see this is completely empty right now. And what I need to do is go to the upload button. There's a whole bunch of options here across the top. Most are grayed out because I have nothing selected. I'm just going to go to upload. Now, depending on your host again, you may have this kind of HTML5 version where you can just drag and drop a file onto here. You may have to go search for the file. Again, it just depends on the host that you're on. So I'm going to take this file, I'm going to drag it right over to here. And you'll see the progress bar. It should only take a couple seconds to do. It's really pretty quick. Now, as long as the bar is blue, that means it's not complete. You'll see that the bar was actually blue and it said 100% there. Sometimes it actually sticks around for a couple seconds. So you may want to make sure that just wait till it turns green and then you'll know you're all done. Now I can close this window out and I'll come back to my hosting. All right, so here's my public HTML file folder and there's nothing in it. All right, so what you need to do is you need to refresh it. This is not constantly updating itself. So we just need to upload it, or reload it right here. So I click reload. And we'll see that my files are right up there, but they're still zipped. So where's all those files that I need? So across the top up here, you'll see some different options as well. And we're going to say extract. We're going to extract all the files that are in this compressed folder that make up our WordPress site. So say extract. And it'll say, where do you want to extract them to? Public HTML is where we want to go, so just leave that as it is. And we'll say extract files. All right, so say close that out. All right, so the files are still not where I wanted them to be. Now WordPress does this the way that it's zipped. It just kind of creates this folder right here. So I have to take one extra step. I have to go into this WordPress folder. I'll double click that. Now there's all my files, but they're in a folder. So I need to pull that back into my main directory. So I'll say select all. and then I'll click on move. I want to move these back a folder. So remember, we were in that public HTML. That's where we want to be. These are in this folder called WordPress. All I have to do is just simply delete that word and hit OK. You'll see all the files all of a sudden disappear. And if I come back to public HTML, all my files are now in here. Now, one important thing to do is you don't want any folders with nothing in it. So come back up to this empty WordPress file and we'll say delete. In fact, I'm going to delete this installable version of WordPress as well. Just no need to have that. I'll say skip the trash and done. All right, so now I have a perfectly installed version of WordPress of the files. The second half of this is installing the database. Let's come on back to the, don't need that anymore. Come back to the control panel and we'll say, okay, now we need to create a database. So we come up to this MySQL database wizard. There's usually a couple different SQL or PHP MyAdmin, all these things under databases. In this case, we want the wizard. That's going to help walk us through creating a database. Now we have to give it a name. Now this you definitely want to write down because you're going to need this for the next step. So it's going to say create a database name. I just give it like 3 or 4 random letters. And I'll copy both the first part of it and the second part that I just typed in right here. All right, so you can see I just copied it so it looks just like that right into here. You will need this here in a second, so make sure you have it ready. So next step. Now I like most people say not to have the same username and database name. I keep them the same just for simplicity. So I put that in there, and I usually like to generate a password. So I'll copy that information and I'm going to put it right below here. So these are the 2 things that I'm going to need to finish installing my WordPress website, is those 2. So I'll say close. Now I have a kind of a password saver, so sometimes this stuff defaults back. So I'm going to go ahead and just paste that back in. I'm going to say password and password again. It's asking for it again just to confirm it, and I'll say create user. So that just created the database for me. Now one last question is, what privileges do I give this database? In this case, I'm going to say all privileges. That's going to keep it nice and simple. And I'll say next step, all set. So I'll return home. All right, so the very last step we need to do is go to our domain name. And in the next step, I'm going to show you how to connect your domain name and then test this out.